Peterson.
I'm like, come on, Waters. And he's got to make fun of me about you throwing cheese in my head.
Talk trash.
So my attorney's called your attorney. We'll see how it works out.
Good thing an attorney is sitting in between you two, right? I'm going to play peacemaker, negotiator.
You're my attorney.
In this moment, I am. But right now, I'm just excited to be on the couch with you guys. Happy Sunday. I'm excited to be back.
We all lost a little bit of sleep. So did you. You might be. In fact, our ratings are probably going to be terrible in this.
Oh,
we can say whatever we want in the 6 o'clock hour because everyone's still asleep. Right?
Get that attorney ready, right?
You know, they'll be here at 7, so you're in the bonus edition of Fox and Friends Weekend right now. No one else is watching. Just
you want to talk about bonus coverage? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's at that festival down in Austin, South by Southwest. Sort of a music festival is where it started. It became tech deal. Now politics is there. All kinds of 2020 hopefuls. But she is front and center. She did this long interview, and she's talking and talking and talking.
Oh, she is. You know, South by Southwest, the elite media tech, as Ed said, they all gather together and congratulate each other. And lots of politicians went. Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, Howard Schultz. We'll get to some of that. But the line was the longest by far for Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They asked her about the state of politics. Ronald Reagan came up. FDR came up.
She slammed FDR and Reagan.
Yeah. She slammed them both and talked about America as, well, something else. Listen.
Well, I think a perfect example of how special interests and the powerful have pitted white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans in order to just screw over all working class Americans is Reaganism in the 80s when he started talking about welfare queens. Mm-hmm. He's painting this like really resentful vision of essentially black women who were doing nothing, that were sucks on our country, right? That's not explicit racism, but still rooted in a racist caricature. It gives people a logical reason to say, oh yeah, no, toss out the whole social safety net.
Yeah.
And then as a result, we are all devastated. When someone's talking about our core, it's like, oh, this is radical. But this isn't radical. This is what we've always been. Mm-hmm. I think all of these things sound radical compared to where we are, but where we are is not a good thing. And this idea of like 10% better from garbage shouldn't be what we settle for.
So 10% better than garbage, that America right now, what's happening in America is garbage?
What kills me about that is how I feel like it was just littered with all of these trigger words that makes the audience laugh and cheer, when really what she's saying is so confusing. She said we're 10% up from garbage when we know that wages are on the rise, and that's the direct result of the capitalist culture. It's not the direct result of imposing regulations. She says she makes it clear that, by the way, taking from someone else or my gain doesn't mean taking from someone else. Yeah. And yet literally that's exactly what her proposed policy is, which is to take from the top to give to the bottom. There's just so many contradictions in there. I don't understand how these kids, frankly, can listen to that in the audience and hear it.
One word that was not mentioned, Venezuela.
Right.
No, never.
That never came up.
Actually, Howard Schultz brought it up, though. To boos. The audience booed him when he brought up Venezuela.
Because, Emily, what you just said is racist. FDR is racist. Ronald Reagan is racist. I'm racist. Ed's racist. Dave, the cameraman, is racist. We're all racists today. No, that is exactly how she explains away opposition to what she wants to do in socialism. And then she calls our country garbage because her premise is that it's amazing because we've never been more racially equitable. Never more gender equitable. The boats have been rising for everybody. Think about what middle-class people have access to today compared to 50 years ago as far as technology and well-being. So she's looking at it through one lens. She's right about one thing, though. We are not in a moderate moment at all. Right. She says, I'm not for the moderates or the meh people. I'm in for radical change. Sure. And that is where the base is right now. That's why you see the base of the
Democratic Party. So they were super excited with everything that AOC was saying. Then she has every right to say it. Free country. She's a new member of Congress. She's speaking out. Pete's giving the other side and all of that. Well, Howard Schultz decided to go to the same conference, and that's fair. And Howard Schultz decides to present, because he's thinking about a potential independent run for president, a more common sense approach, a more moderate approach. And the left didn't like it at all. Watch.
That's a well-intentioned idea, but it's never going to happen. Let's propose things that are true, that are honest, that are sincere, and that are realistic. For us to start moving towards a level of socialism is such an extreme position and something that I think is inconsistent with the values and the heritage and the tradition of the country. If Donald Trump runs against one of those types of candidates, it's my belief that Donald Trump will be reelected.
And that's what the Democrats don't want to hear. He's speaking truth to power. The further left the Democrats go, the more likely it is that Donald Trump wins re-election. Now, he is speaking with his own interest, Howard Schultz, because he's trying to present this sort of moderate course that I mentioned, and that may or may not work. But the Democrats simply don't want to hear it, so they are trying to drown him out.
And, know the audience. Like, they booed him in that. They didn't want to hear his common sense approach. And the Daily Beast, subsequently, their headline read, Howard Schultz bombs at South by Southwest. Quote, you don't like that. Because when the audience booed, he was like, what, you guys don't like that? And he was talking about Venezuela. So again, it's like this, the Kool-Aid that's just saturated the audience there in those cases.
Again, think about our moment. This is not his moment. This is the radical leftist moment. This is the socialist from the Bronx moment. The liberal CEO of Starbucks, everyone's crunchy favorite restaurant, gets booed at South by Southwest because he doesn't like socialism. It's a preview of what moderates are going to face in this cycle. And speaking of moderates, a poll just came out from Des Moines Register, CNN, and a few others in early March of likely Iowa caucus goers. So these are folks on the Democrat side that will go to caucuses. Look who's on top. Joe Biden comes out at 27%.
That's
Bernie
largely
Sanders.
name ID. He may not even get in, but also every time
Correct.
he's run on his own, when he wasn't a sitting vice president, he got low single digits. So right now he's up high. Bernie Sanders, fascinating that he's at 25%. We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, that not to discount him, right? And those that said, oh, there are some already casting doubt. Look how close he is up there. Note that a lot of Democrats have been in Iowa for quite some time. So those numbers might be really indicative, and maybe it is a half step past name recognition at this point.
Even more interesting than individual candidates, feelings that you might have if the party nominee thought the country should be more socialist. These likely Iowa caucus goers, the ones who are going to decide the fate of the Democratic nominee, 56% very mostly satisfied with socialism, basically. 33% very or mostly dissatisfied. 11% somehow not sure.
This is why Joe Biden is still in the Caribbean, trying to figure out whether
Can
he should run for
actually
president.
run as a moderate?
Has the party left him? Can he raise the money? Is the energy there? Does he want to become a socialist, or will he be Jeb Biden? Will he be the Jeb Bush of this cycle? Everyone thought because he had name ID, Ed, to your point, he'd be the front runner.
Jeb Bush had great name
but
ID.
the kids don't love him. The socialists don't love him. The greenies don't love him. No one who you need in your base in the Democratic Party loves him. The more I watch this process, the more I believe that Bernie Sanders has an advantage. And he could step in it. I don't know. But this guy's got the energy because he was there when no one else was, and he'll talk about socialism in a full-throated
Real quick,
way.
Emily, look at these issues and how it plays into what you were saying a moment ago. Iowa Democratic voters, what you care a lot about. 81% health care. Is that Medicare for all? Climate change, 80%. Green New Deal.
Whoa.
Income inequality. We heard that going back to Barack Obama. Race relations, immigration. Interesting, immigration is so high up. President talks about that all the time. Job creation is in the middle of the pack. Also interesting, if you go way down, international trade at 37%, it's higher among Democrats than impeachment. Only 22% say they care a lot about impeachment, yet Democrats talking about impeachment all the time in Congress.
Which is interesting because I feel like those numbers really belie the fraction within the Democratic Party, right? You have the kind of older ones at the top that are focused on impeachment. That's at the bottom. Nearer the top was climate change and those progressive issues that Biden's not necessarily touching on, that he might not represent that progressive push from the left, that Bernie Sanders might, et cetera. So that's
Again,
an
that's
interesting,
the
and
base.
Iowa.
That's the primary base, not necessarily the general electorate base. So does that person who has a manufacturing job in Pennsylvania care about climate change the way primary voters do? That's part of the
So
challenge.
what do you think?
Great
Where's the
point.
Democratic Party headed? Who's the likely nominee to come from the ashes of all of this? Friends at FoxNews.com.
Yeah.
All right, guys, turning to your headlines, we start with a Fox News alert. A Chicago police officer is in critical condition after he was shot in the shoulder serving a warrant. Police say the 34-year-old officer was at the back of the home when someone fired through the door. Police did not fire back. Authorities have not identified the officer, but say he spent 8 years in the Marine Corps. He is expected to survive. A 19-year-old woman is in custody. Also breaking, an airplane carrying 157 people crashes 6 minutes after takeoff in Ethiopia. The Ethiopia Airlines flight was heading to Kenya. Search and rescue operations are underway. The airline has not commented on possible casualties, but the Prime Minister's office offered condolences to victims who have lost loved ones. There's no word yet on what caused the crash.
The mainstream media is incapable of standing up and acknowledging their mistakes, committing to the idea that they will do better. They're not going to do better because they can't acknowledge how badly they're now reporting.
The attorney for the Covington High School student at the center of that Capitol Hill confrontation, blasting the media as he gets ready to sue CNN for more than $250 million, accusing the network of vicious and direct attacks on Nicholas Sandmann.
Joe Concha is a media reporter for The Hill and WOR radio talk show host. He joins us now to weigh in. Good morning, Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Emily. Congrats on your Antonio Brown going to your Las Vegas Raiders, by the way.
Thank you. We are quite excited. Sorry, not sorry, Steelers. So, Joe, tell us your read on this impending case that, as we know, will be more than $250 million.
Yeah, I don't know if the money so much matters, guys, in the court of public opinion. The symbolism around this is all around accountability, which is increasingly a foreign concept in our media. In other words, how many times do you see firings or suspensions over major mistakes, and how many times do you see these mistakes go against, say, a Democratic lawmaker or group? It always seems to go in one direction. It's all about due process. Remember Brett Kavanaugh, guilty until proven innocent. Why? Because he was a Trump Supreme Court nominee. Jussie Smollett, innocent. The story was bought by the media, many in the media, because there were two guys allegedly that were wearing MAGA hats that attacked him, and obviously now with Covington as well. So people see all of this and they say, okay, we want to see some responsibility here being held, and the lawsuit is symbolic of that. Now, let me just get to you one thing around intent, okay, as far as mistakes being made or not being made. This is a fascinating poll that I talked about last year, that I wrote about last year, I should say. Americans believe, 3/4 of them, traditional major news sources report news they know to be fake, false, or purposely misleading, including 80% of independents. This is a very real perception out there, and that's why the Washington Post and CNN are going to have their hands full, because many in the public believe that these mistakes are being made intentionally, not because they're just mistakes because they're moving too fast.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, Nicholas Sandmann's attorney went on to talk about why CNN is being sued. Take a listen.
CNN couldn't resist the idea that here's a guy with a young boy with a Make America Great Again cap on. But they're out there right away going after this young boy, and they maintain it for at least 2 days. Why didn't they stop and just take an hour and look through the internet and find the truth and then report it? Maybe do that before you report the lies.
The entire interview airs tonight, by the way, on Life, Liberty, and Levin on the Fox News channel. Joe, your response?
Well, I think in the end, Lin Wood is right? I mean, in this case, the video that was the mistake around all this that so many outlets ran with, the fact was that video was heavily edited by a partisan group. Check your sources, guys, before you just start to run with a narrative that you love a lot. And here's the bottom line, guys. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Half the country believed, and many still believe, that Nick Sandmann, when they see that video, they think that he is the face of racism. So the real challenge for Lin Wood is, can he prove damages? Is Nick Sandmann now damaged for life, job prospects, and so on, if because of this video? And that's where we're at.
And
right
Joe,
now.
as you know, Lin Wood, way back when, represented Richard Jewell, who was alleged to be the Olympic bomber. That all fell apart. It makes you wonder, some of the media haven't learned lessons from years and years ago. Joe Concha, appreciate you coming in. Meanwhile, we want to note Fox has reached out to CNN for a statement on the pending litigation. Have not heard back yet. We'll obviously add that later in the show or throughout the weekend once we hear.
Thanks, Joe.
And thanks for those cues, man. That was great.
You got it. Well, the Colonials could be history, they say.